coming up here. We're going to start, and this little song is going to bring you in and get you started. Tried and true, with thanksgiving, Lord, Lord, for you, cleanse and wash me, make me holy, restore, fit for service, a higher cleansing, an empty vessel in which you pour. Heal the sick, feed the hungry, so that pain fit for footsteps of our Master, complete serve with hearts aflame. Sorry. Okay. Okay, here we are. I don't know how I've got there. That should have got them in, but anyhow, I'll just have to go here the hard way. I don't know how to get back. Okay. There it is. We are ready to start again. Okay, our word that we're looking up here now, our next law of health is temperance. What does temperance mean? Temperance is, yes, it's moderation, but really it's better, because you can be moderate by eating rubbish. It is self-control. It's abstaining from that which is harmful, using wisely that which is good. And this is going to be ongoing. All through our lives, we'll have to make choices to choose those things that will build up our health and not break them down. And it's very, very easy. And I had this picture, or a similar to picture than this before, because guess what? You know, most of those things people would say you'd like the taste of. Well, I can't see anybody really say they like the. I've got a little mini hobby horse, and my hobby horse is 2-minute noodles, how harmful they are for everyone. And I just like to share with people how terrible 2-minute noodles are. And so many parents will use them for their kids, to feed their kids, because they're a cheap meal and they're tasty. Kids like them. And I've even seen kids at school having 2-minute noodles. They will actually just have the noodle cakes and they'll just sprinkle the dry stuff over them and just eat them like a cracker. I couldn't believe it, you know, little bits of crazy. But now this is what we've got to say no to. So temperance is saying no to the things that are harmful, Moderation in the things of the good. So you know that moderation in the things of good are, you know what we're talking about. That means if carrots are good for you, are you going to go out and eat a bag of carrots? Normally not, okay? You might juice a bag of carrots, but you can get that down. But what I'm saying here, but we've got to say no to things. Okay, so here we're going to do no to alcohol. Okay, so what do we go? Well, you know, that's pretty obvious. Tobacco. Do you know they say the research in tobacco is that, I think I've got it in one of my other books, it's all the chemicals in tobacco that are causing so much problem too. It's not just the tobacco, it's what they're doing. It's the addictive chemicals that they're putting in cigarettes that are so harmful. Meat, dairy, eggs. You're questioning me? Why eggs? I see these are coming under the topic which I'll do tomorrow, which is China study, covers under that. So I'll talk to you about that. But now what about chocolate? I know there's some here. Some people would put their hand and say they're addicted to chocolate, or they like their hidden little. Every once in a while there's a chocolate at home, and you know, and they like it, and I understand that because it is addictive, and it's hard. Somebody told me how hard they found giving up chocolate. They were totally addicted to it. They knew that they couldn't give it up, and I see that, and I think to myself, yeah. Okay, I understand. So what is in the chocolate? Now, I've got an article in my book. If you see and you look under the chocolate, you'll look at what it's got in it. And I can still remember reading, there was a section, I was doing a class, and I was reading out what the harmful things in chocolate, some of the methylxanthines and all these things that alter your cells, the protoplasm of your cells. And I said, one of the things it does, it causes fibrocystic breast lumps. And there was a woman there in the audience, she went, oh, like this, like that. She reacted. And she says, oh, I've got fibrocystic breast lumps and I love chocolate. And I think, you know, just something as simple as that. You know, when we're dealing with people, when you're going through them, somebody will come to you and they'll say, what can you do for such and such a problem? And they do this all the time to me. And they say, oh, look, I've got such and such. You know, you've got to be a sort of, you think to yourself, I think outside the square. How can I teach people how harmful something is that, you know, and you don't, they don't correspond, the chocolate they're eating to the symptoms they're having. But you read, what are some of the harmful products of chocolate? You've got the book open there now. You've got the book. What are some of the harmful effects of chocolate?
I'm trying to find it. Oh, here we are.
Yeah.
It contains toxins called methylxanthines, such as caffeine, theobromine,
Yeah.
theophylline.
Yes, that's right. And they alter the protoplasm of the cell. They cause heart racing. They cause tremulous. Yep. Yes, there's so many effects of chocolate. And who's telling people about it? And is it addictive? Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you, most of these things are addictive. Most of them. Let's go on now and we talk about ice cream. I've even got a little section in my book about ice cream. Now, the ice cream that we're talking about is, I can make actually a nice healthy ice cream, okay, which occasionally I eat, okay? It's not like saying you cannot make a nice healthy ice cream. And I can remember my mother when we were little kids, we'd have ice cream nearly every day for a meal because our family liked it. And we had a dairy farm. We had that much milk, so we would always have it. And Mum would be always making desserts using the milk. But I just think to myself, but not like what now is. Do you know what's in ice cream now? You know, it's got even stuff in there. Could I just grab your book for a moment, please? I've got my book tucked away under there somewhere. Thanks. Ice cream. Ice cream. It contains diethyl glycol, which is a cheap chemical that is used as an emulsifier instead of eggs, and it's used. There's got so many chemicals in here. There's a solvent, there's a paint stripper, there's all these things. It's a flavour. There are so many harmful things in your ice cream. And and you look at all these ingredient lists, they are so long. Why do they do that? Why on earth do they do that? Sometimes I think to myself, and not only that, they put all this ingredient list in such tiny writing. Okay, you can hardly read it. And they are so harmful. And I've just come to the conclusion, look, I don't even bother going near them. And now they've got something called a plant-based ice cream now, which in a pinch is okay. But you look at the ingredients of that, and it's still not much good. Apparently they've got some sort of app that you can put on your phone, and you can just, what is it called? Yucca? Okay, you put it on your phone and you can just put in a barcode of food, and it comes up if it's good or not good. And I thought to myself, that's great, you know. Cheese. I think I've got something in there. What do they use for cheese? You know, how do they make cheese? I want you to, you know, something. And this is a hard thing because some people have just got such a palate for it. You see, we never did. When we grew up as kids, my mother would buy a tiny little packet of cheese maybe once or twice a year, and that was thinly sliced for the whole family. We couldn't afford cheese. But yet, I tell you what, if you grew up in somewhere like Europe, my husband grew up in Europe. Europe's are big on cheeses. They love their cheeses. And so what do? All cheeses, look, the harder the cheese, the harder the cheese, the worse it is. Like, you know, it's the harder the cheese. The softer the cheese, like a cottage cheese or something like that, it's not as detrimental to your body. But you know what? We can make nice cheeses. There's so many good recipes out for nice cheeses, and you just get used to them. I don't miss the old cheese now anymore. So you really have to understand that we have to go to something better. Tea, coffee, I talked about that a little bit earlier. Caffeine, and we're talking even about something as simple as Milo. What's Milo got in it? It's got sugar in it, it's got caffeine, it's got a lot of other stuff, chocolate. Soft drinks, any sugars, any artificial flavourings, any colourings, any altered fats. I touched on that before. I've got a whole section on GMO foods on one of my talks. Stimulating foods. What are stimulating foods? Well, they're foods that irritate us, and we get them in some of the spices. You've got to be careful of some of your spices too. Vinegar. Now, I'm talking about the old white vinegar here. Apple cider vinegar comes under a different category, but I'm very moderate with that. I just use it a little bit. But vinegar, I'm talking about the white sheep vinegar. It's most harmful for our body. So if we're going to use any vinegar in food, because vinegar hinders digestion. So if you've got vinegar added to your food, it's going to stop your digestion in your body. So we're going to have no addiction, no to any addiction. I added in there, that includes gossiping, grumbling or complaining. Avoid very hot or cold foods. Your stomach has to work hard. And now this can also be an effect of with our Ice cream. See, ice cream is so cold. It's not easy for your body to have to warm it up. Your stomach has to work. Because remember, for it to digest food, your stomach has to bring all your food to body temperature. And it puts quite a stress on your body to digest food. Chew slowly, digestion begins in the mouth, and I guess, if I'm honest, this is one of the hardest things I can remember, because I just get busy and I just forget, you know. It's hard to relearn for your body to eat slowly, but you need to do it. Don't eat too many varieties at one meal, and don't eat between meals. Now that is a huge one. Don't eat between meals. 2 meals a day is a good plan. Food digests before bedtime. You know, for years and years, I think some of you would have known, I've said this before in some of the classes I've done, for years we learned, when I first learned all this, and I learned it with a group of people, and they all decided that we'll go this way. It says 2 meals a day plan is good for you. Now this happened to be probably about 40 years ago, 35 years ago, 40 years ago. Peter and I decided to eat 2 meals a day. And you know what? Nothing between meals. And you know what? We just loved it. I actually, when the kids were still at home then, so what I would do, I would give them their vegetables in the morning for breakfast. And then for lunchtime, they would take sandwiches to school. I'd pack Peter a proper lunch because he was working hard. And then we wouldn't have an evening meal. If the kids wanted something, they would go and there was always a bit of something there that I could go and usually they'd have some of the boys, they were teenagers those years, they'd just go and have a Weet-Bix. It's like their breakfast menu. Or they'd have some Thai's toast, or they'd make themselves a grilled sandwich or something like that. And it worked in so well, because I was at that stage teaching music, and I was very busy of an evening, and so I didn't have time to prepare meals. And we did that for years, and the kids loved it too. So all through their teenage years at school. And so they had a proper, good, solid breakfast. So once they got you, and they didn't look for snacks. And this is the point. If you know how to eat right, and if you have a good, solid, nourishing breakfast, you do not look for eating between meals. It's foreign for me to eat between meals. The other day I was cooking and I tasted something and I had it in my mouth and I thought, what do I do here now? It sort of was between meals, and it's just not normal. I'm just not used to it. So once you do that, your body gets used to 2 meals a day, and I just do not look for anything of an evening meal. Now, when I'm in a situation like this and I want to be social, I might eat something small. You know, it's not like it's a hard and fast rule that I never ever eat overnight, but for most times I don't. And you know what I've learned? That now they're calling it intermittent fasting. And I heard this is some years ago. Now it's just come out. All these new doctors are coming out. The best thing for your health is intermittent fasting. And I thought, good, you know what? I used to do that when it was called 2 meals a day plan. I didn't know it was called intermittent fasting. Anyhow, they told us, and they said, well, when you fast, when your body eats its last meal, which normally is for me is maybe 1 o'clock or something or whatever, your body will actually take 12 hours for it to go through its particular digestive phases, for it to really start breaking down and detoxifying your body. Okay, so you stop and think, if you are eating a meal late at night, or maybe let's say not even late at night, let's say it's 6 o'clock at night, your body takes 12 hours to break down that food and to go into a digestive phase where it detoxifies. So then you're waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you have your breakfast at 7, you've only got a window of an hour for it's detoxing. But if I'm eating my last meal at say 1 o'clock, my body's got maybe 5 or 6 hours to detox every night. And I know that that's critical. I know that that is critical for us. Not only detoxing for our body, literal body, it's also for our mind too. Our mind gets detoxed, our brain, our literal brain, the function of our brain is detoxed in the middle of the night too. And so if you're sleeping and you go to bed with a heavy meal in your stomach, it can be so hard to get it digested because your body has to strain a lot. So it's not good to eat a meal at night. My suggestion is try it. If you've never tried it, you don't know how good it is but you've got it. Sometimes it can take a few weeks to get used to it, but you've got to know how to eat good quality food and enough food that it's to last you. Because if I ate a bowl of cornflakes for breakfast, I would be hungry mid-morning. You've got to know. I know that if I have my breakfast, I need a protein in my breakfast and I need a fat in my breakfast to make me last till lunch. And so what's the fat? I usually use your seeds, and I get my protein with my nuts and my seeds. And so that's what I'm having until my lunchtime. Okay, there's another aspect to temperance, which is no tight clothes, natural fibres, careful on what goes on the skin, which we're not talking too much about here. But with temperance, what we've got to realise that resolutions don't always work. True self-control is not making an isolated effort in one area of your life, but is in a divinely implanted principle or character trait which permeates the whole life. It affects all areas of our lives. God will give us strength to give up our bad habits when we choose to do so. And it's really hard because I've heard people. There was one lady, she came in and she was talking about. We were talking about coffee. And she said, I can't get off coffee. And then I said to her, do you want to get off coffee? She said, no. I said, well, there's not much point if you don't want to. And she's struggling to get off it. If she doesn't want to get off it, it's the same if you've got cigarettes. If you don't want to get off it, you're not going to go follow that first hurdle to get off it. You have to want to do it first of all. And remember, true temperance is a gift of God. It's not something that temperance is something we think, I'll make my resolution, because some people do not have that resolution. They can't make a mind up and say, oh, look, I'll give up a drug, especially if you're helping someone come off drugs. Very, very difficult. You've got to know how to help somebody come off drugs. So they've got to want to do it as well. Okay, our next one is air. Now this one is another huge one too, which I'm going to talk about, and I'll touch on some of it, but I'm going to actually I'll talk about that in a minute. I'll just do this first. To think about clearly, our brain needs lots of fresh air. There are other factors which tend to deprive the brain of adequate stores of oxygen, such as alcohol, caffeine, tobacco, sugar, and a high-fat diet. Poor posture and lack of exercise can also contribute to the problem. Chronic brain oxygen deprivation increases the risk of memory deficit, mental decline, and even dementia. Now, this one is huge because I tell you what, there would be, I'm sure, unless maybe some of the young ones don't see this, but everybody my age will admit to, the brain doesn't work like it should. Okay, why is our brain not working as it should? Well, I've got a few suggestions, and I'm going to talk about that, and I'll talk about that in another talk, which I'm going to add, and it's coming in on breathing. How do we breathe? It is so important we understand more about breathing, because it'll blow your mind away when you realise how we've got to breathe. Because remember, chronic brain oxygen deprivation increases the risk of memory deficit, mental decline, and even dementia. Now, who of us wants to end up with dementia? So what have we got to do now to stop ourselves from ending up with dementia? Well, there's certain things we can do. Oxygen is essential to tissue health. In the absence of oxygen, cell death begins to take place. I'm going to talk to you about how we're breathing, which is in a moment. But cells deprived of oxygen are most susceptible to malignant change. Air pollutants, it's so hard because fresh air, you look at what they're doing to our skies now. How do we get fresh air? We've just got to do the best we can. Stove heat affects the air quality. And what do I mean by stove heat? That means when you've got heating going on in your room, that can really detrimentally affect the air quality. We need to get outside and breathe fresh, clean air every day. How do we do this? Easy. It's if you can combine it with your exercise. Great if you can do it, and your breathing exercises, which we'll talk about tomorrow. Not tomorrow, maybe another day. I can't remember what day it is. But we need to learn to breathe correctly through their nose. This is something which I'm going to do. I've decided to do a whole topic on this one because it's really, really amazing. The research that's coming out about breathing through your nose as opposed to breathing through your mouth. And how many people breathe through their mouth, especially at night? We're sitting there and most people have got their mouth shut, which is good. We should have our mouth shut. But you're breathing through except me, I've got my mouth open. But if you're breathing through your nose, it's helping a lot of it's bringing, and I'll talk about that in another subject. Okay, but when we sleep, respiration increases. For this reason, it's important to keep windows open at night so we can breathe in fresh, vitalised air. And so this is really important. Our blood transports oxygen to the body tissues provided you've had enough water to keep the blood flowing freely. Keep your skin clean. Your pores need to breathe. We talked about a little bit before with one of the people here. I'm talking about what do we put on our skin. I'm not touching that here. I haven't got a slide here. But what do we put on our skin? This stops our skin from breathing too. We have to be aware of that. We have to make sure we have good quality. Not good quality. We have to be very aware of what we're putting on our skin. Fold back the bed covers to allow the bed to air out a few hours each day. Do not allow dust to build up in the house, especially behind the bed. Keep the air around the house clean. No mouldy, rotting, smelly substances giving off germs. No damp, mouldy spores poisoning the air. Now, this is interesting because did you know that if you lived in a house that has mould on the walls, there is a very high probability that you're going to be sick and you're going to have bronchial problems and you will not get better. Very high probability of it. And you can't believe it. You think to yourself, mould on the walls? Because they give off little spores. My husband Peter used to work in pest control, and he said when you'd go over underneath a house, and he said there was you could have a light. They had some sort of light that he said you could see the spores, especially if you have a mouldy underneath the house, you could put this light in there and you could see all those little spores floating around in the air. And he says, guess what? You're breathing them all in. You don't even know that you've got them there, but you're breathing in mould spores. Now, if you breathe in mould spores, it is detrimental to your health. Absolutely. The Bible talks about that if you've got mould in your house, what should you do? You clean it up. If you clean it up the second time and it comes back, what should you do? Burn your house down. It's as simple as that. You've got to get yourself out of a mouldy house.
What do they do in America and that? Because they have got mould and all that through.
True. If you've got mould in your house, a lot of people are really sick. Yeah, it really is. It is really a hazard. It's a very, very real health hazard. Mould is so detrimental and bad for your health. And even mold on your food that you're eating is very bad. You should not eat any food that's gone mouldy. Be careful of it. Be extra careful of it, especially fruit that's gone mouldy. Yes?
I know a lady who had a leak under her kitchen sink, and it wasn't dealt with for many, many years, and she was seriously.
Yeah, she was sick because she had a leak under her kitchen sink.
Yeah, and it was because it was all mouldy under there.
Do you know, it's even interesting in our house, years ago, now we've got quite a large house, but up the front corner, we had a new pipeline put in, and the plumber only screwed the connectors just hand tight, didn't tighten it properly. Okay, so this was probably a year or so later. I can't remember how long it was. It was definitely at least a year, could have even been 2 years later. I noticed right down in the corner of my house, right down far in the bedroom, I was getting mould on the wall. And I thought, look, we've lived in this house for all these years. How come I'm only finding mould on the wall down here? And I couldn't believe it. And so we got all sorts of things. We opened up the cupboards, we dried them out, and we thought, what's happening here? And I couldn't believe it, because why is it down here where it is? Then all of a sudden one day we went out in the front corner, which was it would have been nearly as far, not quite as far as the length of this hall, but it was quite a way down to the corner where the mould was, on the ground, underneath where that pipe was connected, only hand tight. You could walk there and you could feel there was moisture, there was water there was plenty of, the soil was full of water, and you just press and you step up and down, and you could see the water in the soil. And so I think Peter dug back the pipe, and all of a sudden we realised that it hadn't been tightened proper with a wrench. It was only hand tightened. We did that. It was tightened up properly, and the mould went away. But what amazed me is how far away from that, right down the bottom of the corner of the house, as the mould came up. Now it just still amazed me to this day. How come? And it was not only there; it was different places along that side wall of the house where it was getting mouldy. And I thought, well, how quickly you can get mould in your house, and you don't even realise it, just by a simple thing of a pipe that wasn't tightened properly. You know, that poly pipe, the joiners in the poly pipe. So you have to be careful. Now, the other thing is, do not allow any animal odours inside your home. It's best to keep animals outside your house. Hello? Okay, now you probably, if you live in that house, you don't smell it. But people who come into the house, they can smell it. And I can remember visiting this lady, and I walked in, and honestly, I had a friend with me, and we were invited to stay for a meal, and honestly, it just took us away. Our breath was taken away. And I can remember the lady with me, she had a hanky, and she was like going like this in front of her face. She was blowing it. She just said, this lady with me, I thought to myself, boy, it was just so overwhelming. She just couldn't breathe through this. Sometimes, for people who don't know, and you're not living there, this person had no idea, but her house was so smelly. You need to be aware of it. So don't air out your house. If you've got animals inside, just realise that there's odours that come, and there's pet dander, causes problems, so just be aware of that. We just decided years ago we wouldn't have animals in our house, and that's just the way we are. And I don't mean to tread on toes when because some people love their animals and they love them inside, but please be aware that you need to keep that smell, because it's going to break down your health. Be aware of it. Okay, the next we're going to get to is rest. And many people complain about being sleepy during the day. Others have insomnia. Others find it difficult to get to bed on time. Many burn the midnight oil, but they have no routine. And this is the problem with a lot of people. especially young people. They don't have a routine. I tell you what, I'm still the same. I lived with a man who was so routine. Up the same time, breakfast the same time, go here, do this the same time, everything. And I'm just so used to it, and I love it. I love the routine. I can't understand how people can sleep in so late in the morning, How could they do it? It's just not, but because I love my routine. Because if you sleep in the morning, and if you have your breakfast, your body loves regularity. So if you're eating, let's say 7 o'clock every morning at 1 o'clock at lunchtime, if you decide to sleep in and you don't get up till 9 o'clock, what's it going to do to your breakfast? All of a sudden, I'll have it later. It puts everything else out, because then if you have that later, when are you going to have your other meal? Because you can't have that there, because it's just all over the place. I just find it very difficult for people who sleep in. Okay, I just don't sleep in at all. I'd prefer to go to bed much earlier. Go to bed earlier. I love going to bed earlier. I recently spent some time in Queensland, only a few weeks ago, and the people I stayed would go to bed early. I wouldn't go to bed early. They went to bed at 6 o'clock. We're talking about early. Okay, and you know what? I just left and I went into my room. I just did a few little things, and guess what? 7:15, I was ready to go to sleep. And I loved it. I had such a good sleep, but I was awake early. Probably 2:30 I was awake. And I just spent quite a few hours just reading my Bible, just doing just beautiful time by myself in the morning. And I just loved it. It was so, what can I say, restful. That's what I'll say. It did rest it, So just remember that. But what do you do if you have insomnia? I've got a few clues for insomnia. One of them is, well, number one for me, I've had times in my life where I couldn't sleep all night. Usually a lot of women go through this when they go through change of life. They get a lot of nights where you have sleepless nights. Do any of you women identify with that? Okay, so what I've found, and I find even to this day, if I get to bed earlier, I can fall asleep. But if I wait till 9 or 10 o'clock, I find it very difficult to go to sleep. That's just me. It's like there's a window. If I lose that window, I'll get a second wind, and that second wind stops me from falling asleep easily. Okay, so that's one thing. Go to bed early. The other thing is obviously not eating at night. That's another thing too. But one other little trick we found is getting outside. Remember I told you, go outside, do that wet grass walking. We also did another thing. We would walk. We'd do cold water treading. We'd go outside and we had our feet in cold water just before we go to bed. We got a big tub outside our bedroom, and we'd go and just step in that and just get our legs really cold, and then go inside and then go to bed. What happens if you get your legs really cold, like with that, or with walking in the cold grass, is after you go inside and you've dried your feet off and you put socks on, your excess blood from your head flows down to your feet to warm them up. And that takes that pressure off, and often it's because we've got excess blood in the area, in our head. Another one, I'll talk about this one other time, is about doing wet socks, putting your wet socks on your feet to go to bed. And I'll talk about that in the hydrotherapy section. But being unusually fatigued can often be caused by a fungal overgrowth, okay? Studies have shown that going to bed early does actually give health benefits. It is sleep primarily in the hours before midnight that information learned during the day is transferred from the hippocampus area of the brain, which is your short-term memory, into the permanent storage area of the neocortex. This deep sleep time occurs before midnight. So how do you establish good sleep habits? The average person needs 8 to 9 hours of function of sleep daily for proper immune function, tissue repair and nervous system. So have a set bedtime, rising time, as well as for eating, exercise, study and work. Just get yourself organised in your life. Don't be all over the place. And I'm finding it very interesting because those people who are prone to depression are often all over the place. So become regular. Become disciplined. As I said, my husband was very, very highly disciplined. Born in Germany, you know. Germans were disciplined, had so much discipline. And a lot of it rubbed off on me, but I actually have pure German heritage too, so it's sort of coming out on me, all this self-discipline. But go to bed early, sleeping hours before midnight. I just read that there. Eating late, sugary foods, lack of exercise, smoking, the use of caffeine as well as certain drugs can cause sleep problems. I also said do not eat between meals. Allow 5 to 6 hours to pass between meals. Allow your body to rebuild, repair and rest at night. Okay, so if you're eating your breakfast, they've done, and I've got this in my book, when you're eating at night, when you're eating in the morning, you have your breakfast and you have your lunch and you have your evening meal. And if you decide to have a snack mid-morning, when you put your breakfast in your stomach, it starts digestion. If you eat a snack, say 2 hours later, your body will stop, that digestion process will stop and it will restart again. Okay, so then you get to lunchtime. Your digestion here is restarted. It's only had a few hours here, and it gets to lunch, and you put lunch in. Okay, guess what? It has to stop and restart again. Every time you're going to put something in your mouth, your digestion stops and restarts again. So if you have a snack mid-afternoon, you're doing the same again. So they have now found that you can eat breakfast in the morning and you can still have it in your stomach 13 hours after you've eaten it if you've eaten snacks during the day. You are so much better to get used to not eating between meals. One of the most important things that you can do is to stop eating between meals for your health. Allow your body to repair, rebuild and rest at night. Okay, now just as body needs a daily rest, we also need a weekly rest. And you know, it's interesting because your body has daily body clocks. It also has a weekly body clock. And we have a weekly body clock. 28-day cycles, 7-day cycles, 28 days. So, and it's interesting because you stop and think, even heart rates, suicides, natural hormones in breast milk, after surgery, swelling increases on the 7th and 14th day. What they're finding that so much of our body, we have certain cycles in our body. Interesting, if you have a transplanted organ, did you know when the rejection of those transplanted organs happens? On the 7th or the 14th or the 24th or 1st or the 28th? So you're having always a multiple of 7. So you have to be aware of that. Science now has found that out, or doctors or medicine. Human and animal responses to treatment of cancer, fibrinogen, a blood clotting system compound, has a 7-day rhythm. Thus, we were created to have a weekly cycle. It's a built-in feature of our physiology. God commands us to remember to keep his Sabbath day holy. God blessed the Sabbath day, so when we keep this day holy, not working or even shopping, God promised that he will revive our bodies and minds and give us true peace. So remember that God created the Sabbath at Eden. He didn't create it he only repeated it at Sinai. He gave it to mankind at Eden. During the French Revolution, a law was passed to change the weekly cycle from 7 to 10 days. The country publicly rejected God. Animals dropped dead. Anarchy was rife. 3.5 years later, this law was rescinded because France was in chaos. And there's another true type of rest, and that's relaxation. Another type of rest we need is true relaxation. Now, where do you get that? Do you get that when you sit down in front of the TV? No, you just have to realise true relaxation comes from spending time in nature, gardening, walking, sharing time with loved ones, leaving worries and cares behind. So we need to get regularity in our rest. So these are all important. Do you know, it's really interesting. Did you know when you ask people what is the most, I'll just rephrase that. What's the thing that most people can't, what law of health can we not do without? First, people say air. It's true. How long do we drop dead if we don't have fresh air? True. Water, yeah. But you know, very high on the list is rest. Did you know that you will die if you don't sleep? You have to have rest. How long can you last without rest? You can't last as long as you can without food. Food you can last longer than without rest. Interesting, isn't it? Now, our last law of God is trust in God. And this really has got to do with our thought life, our thoughts that we're thinking. And did you know that science now knows that the thoughts you meditate on long term causes a manifestation of your body of disease? And they know now that 87% of the diseases that we have in our body come from our thought life. And they believe that before long, they'll know 95%. So what are we thinking? For every thought that we think, there is a physical reaction in the body. An electrical current travels along the nerves and produces hormones and chemicals that affect our entire body. What we think affects us emotionally, intellectually, and physically. 90% of all the different diseases start with our thought and feelings. And these patterns are formed in childhood. I talked to you earlier about abuse, neglect, inherited and infected. These behaviour patterns, these defence patterns. Do you know, this is really quite real to me. Very real to me. I was married to a man who had severe abuse from his childhood. And I told you earlier that I believed he had a lot of healing that was going on. And he totally forgave his stepfather who abused him. Totally forgave him. But there was still a healing to do. And I know that it was this thinking patterns that formed in his childhood that led to the cancer that he died from. We were actually we'd been eating on, we were having this very, very carefully structured life. I've been following the health message. I've been eating carefully for 35 years. And it really puzzled me, and till I found out and I spoke to somebody who knew, it really puzzled me how my husband could form colon cancer when I'd been so careful with our diet for so many years. And all of a sudden, I spoke, and then when I connected the dots, and this is why I'm sharing all this new, this new information with everyone now, because it's the thinking patterns that cause it. I had a doctor friend told me that Peter's cancer did not come through from nutritional deficiencies or toxins or anything like that. His was an emotional-based cancer. This doctor is trained in this and he knows. And he said that where his cancer was, what it was very emotional. And I think and I know that even though he was he was 84 when he passed away, and I know that even at that stage, he still had these negative thinking patterns from his childhood that were still coming through in his thinking. He would sometimes say them to me. Now, God was healing, and all of a sudden we were learning so much together. But I could still see it, and I could see it. But not only could I see it in him, I also could see it. As we were dealing with all this stuff that was going on in our home when he was being treated, this is only last year, I could also see this negative stuff in me. Remember we talked earlier about all these roots of bitterness, these defense mechanisms. We could see it in him, but I could see it in me too. And he used to say to me, it's in you too. And I could see that. And I said, yes, I know. What I'm saying is that this is really important that we deal with this now. We can't just keep putting it off because it's very real, very, very real. God can heal and restore us, and he wants to do it. A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. Now in the New Living Testament, it's the same text, but it says a cheerful heart is a good medicine, but a broken spirit saps a person's strength. A joyful heart is a good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries the bones. For as he thinks in his heart, so is he. So these are texts saying that as we're thinking in our mind, we are processing things. And it's like with my husband. And this doctor told me and said to me that if Peter would have been a person who would have lashed out, kicked the dog or threw things around, these people actually fare a little bit better with them getting rid of emotions. But Peter, he didn't. He internalized everything. He kept it inside of him. He kept it inside of his heart. And I know that that is part of the reason why that he got this. It says, looking diligently lest any man fail of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be defiled. This is a text from Hebrews 12 verse 15, and I'm going to talk a lot more about this tomorrow. I'm just giving you a tiny little glimpse of it now because it's just in this talk, because I believe that I need to share with you. This is part of the healing that we have to understand for ourselves as well as helping other people to heal. What is a root of bitterness? Well, I believe that these roots of bitterness are these defense mechanisms, or these patterns, or these things that Satan has planted in us. I've actually looked up a list of it, and I'm going to share it in my talk tomorrow, but it's here, and I'll share it with you now. This is a list of roots of bitterness that I have checked out, and I got this from the Spirit of Prophecy. There's 2 pages. That's the first page. Look at them all. Now, all of these are emotional damage that we have caused, we have received. And if you go through them, and we're going to go through them tomorrow, but you have to see, some people that we are going to deal with have huge amount of emotional baggage. How do you get rid of them? And what we've got to do is know it. This is the steps we're going. First of all, this is just identifying it and understanding that we have a way we can have. God has given us a way we can heal from these things. Some people are less damaged, but all of us, we have all been affected, and many have had their health compromised. So how can you go to the person who's got cancer and say to them, well, it's because you've You've got all these negative thought patterns. But that's the reality. That's really what's caused it. So what we've got to do is, I just don't want people wait till they get to the stage where this is it. What can you do to turn this around? We've got to realise we have to deal with the roots of bitterness now in our life. And some roots go very, very deep, don't they? And sometimes you just leave that tiny sliver in there, it will reshoot. But God is the one that helps us dig out the roots. And we'll talk about this tomorrow. How do we do it? It's by admitting it, repentance, confession, cleansing, repair, and restore and heal. But as we learn to trust in God completely in all situations, it brings a peace of mind that will keep us calm, promote health, and prolong life. This is what it's all about, is learning to trust in God. Remember, the last law of health is trusting God. It's got to do with our emotions. Now, if we trust in God, we're going to have to realise, Lord, you're going to have to help me get over all this. I have to admit, I realise I've got problems in my life. I've got to get over them. Because they will break down our health. There's no doubt about it. Trust in God, faith, prayer also provides a significant boost to mental as well as physical health. If stricken down with serious illness, they positively influence your chance of recovery. Develop an attitude of gratitude. Become benevolent. And see, this is it. We've got to start giving out, sharing with people. And remember, we can't heal without God. So we have to start thinking about other people. Learn to help someone in need. Remember I said to you earlier, I said that God knows every single one of us have selfishness. So he's placed a plan for us to get rid of our selfishness. He'll help us. He'll get rid of it if we start working and we start serving and ministering. So that's our call, to start serving and ministering. And it's because as we help others, doing good others will bring health and healing, and doing good is an excellent remedy for disease. There is a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of every man which cannot be filled by any created thing, but only through Jesus Christ. And that's the point. That's that emptiness that people have in them. I used to have that emptiness. I didn't even know what I was searching for. I didn't know I was searching for God. I thought, what is in life? There's got to be an answer to life. Then all of a sudden, the moment I found it, I knew that this was what it was. God. And all around us, people have worry, they have turmoil, they have sickness, they have depression. And it's like, remember when the disciples were in the boat and they had so much going on around them. They couldn't. We have to learn to trust the only person we can put our trust in. Because he is the master healer. He is the one that can heal us. He's the one who can raise us to life. It's only him. He's the only one who can do it. So this last law of health is really important. We've got to get our life right with God. So there you are. We've gone through our 8 laws of health this morning. We'll break for a moment. We'll have lunch. But we've gone through all of them. You realise that they all work together. You can't just have the nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, air, rest without the trust in God. The trust in God is the lynch one that combines all of it together, because if we don't get our thinking right, it doesn't matter what good nutrition we put in our body, it won't heal. If we're having the wrong thoughts in our body, and I tell you what, believe me, I understand people who are severely damaged. They have deep, those tapes that run in their mind, those words that run through their mind. They think, I'm no good. I never amount to anything. Oh, I'm hopeless. Oh, look at me. I hate myself. I hear those. I know what I'm talking about, because I heard those with Peter. I also heard them with some of the people that I've mixed with who I know are very emotionally damaged. I can Thank you, Ralph. So anyhow, we've finished. I really could have shut it off there, but we'll break now for lunch, and we'll have our prayer now, and we'll have grace for lunch right now because everybody is here. Oh, Heavenly Father, we thank you for the time we've been able to share. We thank you for the fact that you have given us these laws of health. We are so grateful, Lord. Give us the grace and the strength to follow them and realize that these are the true answers to all the questions out there. All the people that have health problems, these are the answers. So, Lord, I just pray now that you would strengthen us and nourish us in our bodies, but I especially think as we're going to partake of this food in a short time, we just pray that it would strengthen us and nourish us. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.